We, the undersigned teams, were surprised and shocked by the FIA statement on Friday the 28th of February regarding the conclusion of its investigation into Scuderia Ferrari's Formula One power unit. An international sporting regulator has the responsibility to act with the highest standards of governance, integrity and transparency. After a few months of investigations that were undertaken by the FIA, only following queries raised by other teams, we strongly object to the FIA reaching a confidential settlement agreement with Ferrari to conclude this matter. Therefore, we hereby state publicly our shared commitment to pursue full and proper disclosure in this matter to ensure that our sport treats all competitors fairly and equally. We do so on behalf of the fans, the participants and the stakeholders of Formula One. In addition, we reserve our rights to seek legal redress within the FIA's due process and before the competent courts. I think it's fair to say, ladies and gents, the FIA and Ferrari are in a slight bit of bother this morning. This letter that I have just expressed to you very eloquently, I tried my best, was signed by 7 of the current Formula One teams: McLaren, Mercedes, Racing Point, Red Bull, Renault, AlphaTauri and Williams, leaving the only 3 teams not to sign this letter, quite obviously, Ferrari themselves, Alfa Romeo and Haas F1. And Alfa Romeo and Haas F1 are customer teams of Ferrari that use the Ferrari engines, which have caused this entire controversy. So, what's going on? What's actually happening today? What does this letter actually mean? Because at the moment, it's a whole lot of fuss with not a lot of answers. So I'm going to try and make it as clear as possible for you all. This is not what we expected. We've had a very busy build-up to the season. I think a lot of us are just ready for Melbourne to come round now and just get racing. But anyway, the big news today. The FIA and Ferrari under scrutiny thanks to their own scrutineering, which is the bizarre factor in this report. So, here's the lowdown. Last season, it's safe to say Ferrari's engine was pretty cheeky, was pretty spicy in a straight line, so much so, it was a little bit too quick. And the teams launched not an official complaint, but very similar. It was more of a, hey guys, there's something a little bit fishy going on here. Can you pretty please have a look for us and tell us what we can do, which is legal? That kind of informal, but hey, tell us what's going on here kind of agreement. So, from all the different teams of their press releases I've seen today, some of them say, yes, there was a official complaint. Others just kind of sat back and let other teams do it. So anyway, we get to the stage. Round about the Mexican Grand Prix, there was an official investigation from the FIA into Ferrari's power unit. And funnily enough, something that was brought up several times at the end of the year was that Ferrari's engine that was so good across the season in a straight line wasn't as good at the end of the season. And yeah, of course, cars theoretically can get worse over the year, but it's unlikely. And the huge advantage that we saw Ferrari have at circuits like Monza in a straight line, circuits like Russia, Singapore, where they were doing really well in those sectors of the circuits, all of a sudden we get to Abu Dhabi, we get even to Mexico, circuits theoretically that should really favour the Ferrari's car, wasn't necessarily doing any favours for them. And a lot of people felt that maybe Ferrari, there was some kind of issue. Again, this is kind of a theory that a lot of people were running with, but there was some kind of issue. The FIA have told them to fix it, or Ferrari, knowing they've got scrutineering inbound, have fixed it themselves. But anyway, the season kind of fizzled out for Ferrari a little bit, and I kind of expected that to be that. Everything over and done with. Whatever it was, the FIA sorted it out. However, on the final day of testing last Friday, with an hour to go in testing, so during the session, which is very strange of the FIA to make an announcement during a session. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but the FIA announced that they had reached a settlement with Ferrari. An investigation was carried out, an official investigation was carried out. All sounds fine so far. This is where it gets a little bit tricky though. With this settlement, the FIA agreed not to release the findings with anybody. Not only the public, which I can kind of understand, but not even with the other teams. And this is where things get a little bit sticky. And I've got to be careful what I say. Because a lot of people would like to argue Ferrari International Assistance exists in the world of Formula One. If you don't know what that is, FIA is the meme people sometimes go with. And we've seen in the past the FIA be lenient towards Ferrari, but we've also seen them be lenient to other teams as well. So I usually see it as swings and roundabouts. We go in racing at the end of the day, and some things can be insignificant, some things can be quite mighty. We've seen Ferrari this year, rather than take time penalties, take financial penalties, which is a little bit strange. But also a few years ago, we saw Mercedes do a private test with Pirelli, and I feel they got away quite lightly with that incident. So yeah, swings and roundabouts in the grand scheme of things. But this time round, what's the biggest kicker in their teeth is that the teams aren't really sure what's allowed and what's not allowed. They're not sure how Ferrari has been able to gain such an advantage, and it is highly plausible. And this is why I'm kind of treading on eggshells just slightly. It's plausible that there was nothing wrong. That Ferrari made a solid engine, found a slight loophole, nothing too crazy. The FIA had an investigation, they looked into it, they thought it was fine. All hunky-dory. There you go. Happy days. But if that was the case, you would expect them to at least say that. To at least say, look, we've analysed the situation, here are our findings. Of course, they're not going to give away schematics of the power unit, they're not going to give away any details of the Ferrari engineers and aerodynamicists. So why not show it to the teams? And I think that's the real issue here is, of course, every team that has signed this petition or statement or letter, whatever you want to call it, yes, they want to gain an advantage. And if this potentially slows down Ferrari's season, what a bonus it is for them, even if they're a Williams, let's say, and not necessarily fighting at the front. But even so, all teams have to be equal. We have rules at the end of the day, and something doesn't sit right with the fact the FIA are trying to hide this whole fiasco, which was a big story at the end of last season. And whilst, like I say, I assumed it had all fizzled out over the winter and I didn't expect a statement, the fact that they did do a statement, but it was so poorly written and so shady, is now why questions are starting to be brought up, and is why we don't have answers just yet. And this is going to be something, I was in two minds of doing a video today, but I really think this is going to rumble on for the next few weeks, perhaps even months, while we get more reasons why they haven't released data. And even if they do then release their findings, the next question is, why did they do this in the first place? So I think there's a huge debate coming out of today's story. I will say, this isn't really Ferrari's fault. Although it's the investigation into their power unit, they, of what I would assume, if the FIA offers to not disclose any of the information, they're not going to turn that down. That's a fantastic opportunity for them. So I feel Ferrari, although, like I say, it's their issue, this particular incident, I think, is the FIA's fault. And it's the FIA, it's their job now to fix it. Of course, they are the body that regulates the majority of motorsport around the world. If you're new to Formula One this year and you're not quite too sure who the FIA are, I probably should have said this at the beginning, but it's kind of FIFA in football, FIA in Formula One. That's kind of the equivalent. So even in the letter by the teams, this is the highest governance in the world for motorsport. These are the people that set the standards. And if there's dodginess, that's not the word I was looking for, but I'll keep it in. If there's foul play in the high ranks of the FIA, which again, I don't think there is. I think there has been some miscommunication here, and I do believe Formula One starting up again. The bandwagon is fully on, and any story at the moment to kind of move away from what is the awful situation with the COVID-19 virus, at least this is something that people can keep their eye on while we head to Melbourne. So I'd love to know your thoughts. That's the situation. It's an odd one, but it's a unique one. And I feel in my lifetime, when was the last time there was a big scandal like this? I would like to say Spygate, way back in 2007. But I don't think this is as big as that. That would be a bit over-dramatising. But I'd still love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you think this is Ferrari's fault. Maybe you think there is something far more sinister in the works from the FIA. Again, I'm not too sure, but I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you are new around here and you enjoyed today's video and want to keep up to date with all of the Formula 1 2020 news, reviews, gossip, all that good stuff, feel free to do so. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.